You wake up on a bed of straw. The air is thick, dry, and filled with the scent of incense and sweat. Outside, the sun blazes like fire, and a priest whispers your fate in a language you don't understand. You thought ancient Egypt was all gold and glory. Think again. Tonight, let's walk through the dusty streets of a forgotten city and find out why you wouldn't last even one day. Why you wouldn't survive one day in an ancient Egyptian city, a bedtime story in 5 chapters, Chapter 20. A golden city of sand and silence, you find yourself standing at the edge of forever, where the vast desert meets the green ribbon of the Nile. And before you rises a sight that takes your breath away in the gentlest possible way. The ancient city of Thebes stretches out before you like a dream made of sandstone and gold. The morning sun casts long, soft shadows across the city walls, each stone block perfectly fitted, each surface carved with hieroglyphs that seem to dance in the early light. You breathe deeply, and the air carries the scent of incense from distant temples, the faint sweetness of lotus blossoms floating on temple pools, and something else, something that speaks of thousands of years of human presence in this sacred place. As you walk closer, your feet sink slightly into the warm sand that has blown over the ancient pathways. The city gates tower above you, massive and imposing, yet somehow welcoming in their grandeur. Guards stand motionless in the shade, their bronze spears catching glints of sunlight, their linen kilts pristine white against their sun-darkened skin. They watch you approach with eyes that have seen countless pilgrims, countless merchants, countless souls seeking their fortune in this jewel of the ancient world. You pass through the gates and immediately feel the change. The temperature drops several degrees in the shadow of the thick walls, and you find yourself in a bustling marketplace that somehow feels both alive and dreamlike. Vendors call out their wares in musical voices that blend together like a gentle lullaby. Fresh bread from the ovens of Amun, sweet dates from the southern Oases, linen fine enough for the pharaoh himself. The sounds wash over you like water, creating a rhythm that matches your heartbeat. You notice how the early morning light filters through woven reed awnings, casting intricate patterns on the ground beneath your feet. Children dart between the stalls like schools of fish, their laughter bright and clear, while their mothers bargain with practiced ease, weighing silver pieces against goods with the patient precision of those who know the value of everything. You pause at a fountain carved from rose granite and dedicated to Khnum, the ram-headed god of creation. The water bubbles up from deep springs, cool and clear, and you cup your hands to drink. The taste is pure, mineral, rich, carrying the essence of the deep earth and the gift of the Nile. For a moment, you feel perfectly at peace, perfectly at home in this ancient place. But as you continue deeper into the city, something begins to shift. The initial wonder remains, but underneath it, you start to notice details that your modern mind finds unsettling. The smell of incense cannot quite mask other odors, earthier, more primal. The beautiful hieroglyphs you admired tell stories not just of gods and glory, but of harsh justice, of lives bound by rules you cannot fully comprehend. A priest walks past you, his head shaved smooth, his white robe spotless. In his hand he carries a small golden ankh, symbol of life. Yet his expression is stern, unforgiving. He glances at you briefly, and in that glance you see something that makes you shiver, despite the growing warmth of the day. It is the look of someone who knows secrets, who understands the true cost of life in this golden city. You notice now that the guards at every corner are not merely ceremonial. Their weapons are well used, their eyes alert. They watch the crowd with the practiced gaze of those who know that order in this place is maintained through vigilance, through the swift enforcement of laws that leave no room for ignorance or mistake. The children you found so charming moments before, you see now that many are thin. Their bright eyes, perhaps too large in faces that speak of hunger carefully hidden. The merchants' musical calls begin to sound more urgent, more desperate, as if their very survival depends on each transaction, each careful negotiation. And yet, the beauty remains. The city is undeniably magnificent. The temples rising like mountains of carved stone, their pylons decorated with scenes of pharaohs receiving the blessing of gods. The palaces with their lotus columns and painted halls. The gardens where sacred pools reflect the morning sky like mirrors of liquid silver. You find yourself drawn to one of these temples, the great temple of Amun-Ra. Its entrance is guarded by sphinx statues, each one carved from a single block of sandstone, their faces serene yet watchful. As you approach, you feel the weight of centuries, the accumulated prayers and offerings and desperate pleas of countless souls who have walked this same path. The temple courtyard is vast, paved with stones worn smooth by millions of footsteps. Priests move about their morning duties like dancers in a slow, ancient choreography. Some tend sacred fires, others prepare offerings of bread and beer and precious oils. Still others copy sacred texts, their reed pens moving with practiced precision across papyrus sheets. You want to enter, to see the inner sanctum where the god's golden image receives the morning ritual. But a priest approaches, his expression kind but firm. He speaks in ancient Egyptian, but somehow you understand. This sacred space is not for you. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. There are rules here, boundaries that must not be crossed, consequences that you cannot even imagine. As you turn away, you catch sight of something that makes your blood run cold. A small group of people being led through the courtyard, their hands bound, their heads down. They are dressed in simple linen, but their clothes are torn, stained. They move with the shuffle of those who know their fate is sealed. Behind them walks an official, his expression impassive, carrying a scroll that undoubtedly lists their crimes, their sentences. The golden city suddenly feels less like a dream and more like a place where dreams come to die, where the wrong word, the wrong action, the wrong belief can transform wonder into nightmare in the space of a heartbeat. You realize that your modern sensibilities, your modern understanding of justice and mercy and human rights mean nothing here, less than nothing. The sun climbs higher, and the temperature begins to rise. What felt refreshing and warm an hour ago now carries the promise of heat that will be punishing by midday. You notice that the locals have already begun to seek shade, to move more slowly, to conserve their energy for the long hours ahead. They know something you are only beginning to understand. This beautiful city, this jewel of ancient civilization, is also a place of survival. A place where the weak do not last, where the unprepared do not see another sunset, where the beauty and the brutality are so intertwined that they cannot be separated. You sit down on a stone bench in the shade of a date palm. The trunk rises smooth and tall above you, its fronds rustling gently in the morning breeze. For a moment, you close your eyes and try to recapture that first feeling of wonder, that sense of being in the presence of something truly magnificent. But when you open your eyes, you see a group of workers shuffling past. Their skin is dark with exposure to the sun. Their bodies lean with constant labor. They carry tools for cutting stone, for hauling massive blocks, for the endless work of building and maintaining this monument to divine power. Their expressions are resigned, patient. They have accepted their place in this hierarchy as immutable as the rising of the sun. A scribe hurries by, his reed pen case bouncing against his hip. His white kilt is pristine, his collar of faience beads marking his status. But even he, educated and valuable as he is, moves with the quick efficiency of someone who knows that time is precious, that mistakes are costly, that his position, however elevated depends entirely on the whims of those above him. The contrast is stark and somehow beautiful in its honesty. This civilization, has achieved wonders that will last for millennia, has created art and architecture that will inspire awe for thousands of years, has developed systems of writing and mathematics and medicine that will influence the entire world, but it has done so at a cost that your modern mind struggles to accept. Oh, as the morning progresses, you begin to understand that the golden city of your dreams is real, but so is the harsh reality of life within its walls. The beauty is not an illusion, but neither is the brutality. They exist together, inseparable, like light and shadow, like the fertile Nile and the deadly desert that surrounds it. You stand up slowly, brushing dust from your clothes. Already you can feel the fine sand working its way into every crevice, every fold of fabric. The city is claiming you, grain by grain, moment by moment. And you realize that your journey here has only just begun. The sun is higher now, its rays beginning to slant down into the courtyard with increasing intensity. The priests have completed their morning rituals and withdrawn into the cool interior of the temple. The merchants have erected more awnings, seeking protection from what they know is coming. The workers have increased their pace, racing against the clock of the climbing sun. And you must make a choice. You can turn back now, retreat to whatever modern safety brought you here, or you can continue forward, deeper into this ancient world, accepting whatever consequences await. But you sense, with growing certainty, that there may be no turning back, that this golden city of sand and silence has ways of keeping those who enter, ways that you do not yet understand. The morning breeze dies away, leaving the air still and warm, pregnant with the promise of heat to come. And in that stillness, you hear something that chills your soul. It is the sound of footsteps, measured and purposeful, coming closer. And you know, with the certainty of ancient knowledge suddenly awakened, that your day in this beautiful, terrible, golden city is about to truly begin. Chapter 2. Waking up in a mud brick house. The footsteps you heard belonged to a figure emerging from the maze of narrow streets that snake between the grand temples and palaces. But as this person approaches, you realize they are not coming for you. They are simply going about their daily business in this ancient place. And something about their simple, unremarkable presence makes you understand, with sudden clarity, exactly where you belong in this hierarchy. You follow them, drawn by curiosity and the growing certainty that your earlier visions of grandeur were, perhaps, a bit optimistic. The figure leads you away from the soaring temples, away from the wide ceremonial avenues, into the residential quarter where most people actually live. and with each step, the golden dream becomes a little more tarnished, a little more real. The houses here are different, much different. Where the temples and palaces rise in magnificent stone, these dwellings are built from mud brick, that humble mixture of Nile clay and straw that forms the backbone of ordinary Egyptian architecture. The walls are thick, practical, designed to keep out the heat of the day and the chill of the desert night. But they lack the grandeur you've come to expect. Your guide, for that's what this figure has become, stops at one particular house, unremarkable among its neighbors. The door is simple wood, weathered by countless seasons, with a small symbol painted beside it in red ochre. A protection charm, you realize, against evil spirits and misfortune. They push open the door and gesture for you to enter. Inside, your eyes need a moment to adjust to the dim light. Small windows set high in the walls provide illumination, but they are designed more for ventilation than visibility. The air is cooler here, but it carries scents that speak of a very different reality than the incense, perfumed temples. There is the earthy smell of the mud brick walls, the sweetness of stored grain, the faint staleness of a space where many people live in close quarters. This is your home now. This is where you would sleep if you lived in ancient Thebes as an ordinary person, not a pharaoh, not a high priest, not a wealthy merchant, just one of the countless souls who make up the true foundation of this civilization. And as your eyes adjust, you begin to see exactly what that means. The house consists of 4 small rooms, each serving multiple purposes throughout the day. The main room, where you stand, serves as living area, dining room, and workspace all at once. Woven reed mats cover most of the packed earth floor, their patterns simple but carefully made. A few low stools provide seating, along with some floor cushions stuffed with grain husks. In one corner stands a small shrine, a niche in the wall containing tiny figurines of household gods. Here sits Bees, the dwarf god who protects families, his grotesque face somehow comforting in its fierce protection. Beside him stands Tauret, the hippopotamus goddess who guards women in childbirth. Their paint is worn from countless offerings, countless prayers whispered in desperate moments. The second room is for storage, and as you peer inside, you see large ceramic jars, some taller than yourself. Each one contains precious supplies: grain, oil, dried fish, dates. The wealth of this household is measured not in gold or jewels, but in how much food they have managed to store against lean times, against failed floods, against the countless uncertainties that define life in this place. Some of the jars are nearly empty. You notice their contents consumed and not yet replaced. This tells a story of careful rationing, of meals that might be smaller than hunger demands, of the constant calculation that determines whether there will be enough to last until the next harvest, until the next payment, until the next stroke of fortune. The third room is where the family sleeps, and you realize immediately that privacy, as you understand it, does not exist here. Sleeping mats are rolled and stacked against one wall during the day. At night, they will be unrolled to accommodate parents, children, perhaps elderly relatives or unmarried siblings. The room that seemed adequate in daylight will become cramped and airless when filled with sleeping bodies. And the fourth room, barely worthy of the name, serves as kitchen and contains the household's most precious possession, a small clay oven. Here bread is baked, meals are prepared and the sacred fire is maintained that connects this family to the great cosmic order. But the ceiling is black with soot, the walls stained with smoke from countless meals. The oven gives off heat that makes the small space almost unbearable even in the morning hours. As you explore, you become aware of movement, small sounds that make your skin crawl. Insects everywhere. Beetles scurry across the floor, disappearing into cracks in the mud brick walls. Moths flutter around the oil lamps, their wings leaving powdery traces on every surface. And in the grain storage room, you glimpse the telltale holes that speak of weevils, those tiny destroyers that can turn precious food into worthless dust. The family cat, a sleek creature with the pointed ears and almond eyes of its sacred relatives, watches these insects with professional interest. This animal is not a pet in the modern sense, but a working member of the household, tasked with controlling the rats and mice that would otherwise destroy the stored grain. The cat's presence is practical, necessary, and treated with the respect due to a representative of Bastet, the feline goddess. You sit down on one of the low stools and immediately feel how different this furniture is from what you're accustomed to. The seat is hard, unyielding, designed for function rather than comfort. Your back finds no support. Your legs must adjust to an unfamiliar position. Even the simple act of sitting becomes a reminder that comfort, as you understand it, is a luxury that most people in this golden city cannot afford. Through the small windows, you can hear the sounds of the neighborhood awakening. Children's voices calling to each other. Across the narrow lanes, women discussing the day's tasks as they prepare morning meals. The rhythmic sound of grinding as grain is turned into flour using stone querns that require patient back, breaking labor. A woman enters, and you understand that this is the lady of the house. She moves with the efficient grace of someone whose day is measured in countless tasks, each one essential, none of them optional. Her simple linen dress is clean, but shows signs of careful mending. Her jewelry consists of a few faience beads, pretty but not valuable. Her hair is arranged in a style that speaks of practicality rather than fashion. She begins her daily routine, and you watch with growing understanding of what your life would actually be like in this place. First, she checks the water supply, large ceramic jars that must be filled daily from the neighborhood. Well, the water is precious, carefully conserved, used for drinking first, then cooking, then cleaning, in that order of priority. Next, she examines the grain supply, calculating, measuring, determining how much can be used for today's bread, how much must be saved. This is mathematics of survival, requiring skills that are literally matters of life and death. Too generous today means hunger tomorrow. Too stingy today means complaints from family members whose labor depends on adequate nutrition. She begins to grind grain, and the sound fills the small house, a rhythmic scraping that speaks of patient labor, of women who have performed this task since dawn began, whose mothers and grandmothers did the same. This is not a chore that can be rushed, not a task that can be postponed. The grain must be ground, the bread must be made, the family must be fed. As she works, she hums softly, a melody that seems to help her keep rhythm, to make the tedious work pass more quickly. But you notice the strain in her posture, the way she pauses occasionally to stretch her back, to flex her fingers. This work is taking its toll, aging her body in ways that your modern medical knowledge recognizes, but cannot prevent. Children begin to appear, awakening from their sleeping mats, rubbing sleep from their eyes. They are beautiful, as children always are. But you notice details that speak of a very different childhood than any modern child would experience. Their clothes are simple, practical, designed to be outgrown and passed down to younger siblings. Their skin shows the easy tan of those who spend much time outdoors, but also small scars, scratches, the inevitable marks of a world without modern safety measures. The oldest child, a boy perhaps 10 years old, immediately begins his morning chores, checking on the few animals the family keeps. A goat tethered in the small courtyard, some chickens scratching for insects in the packed earth. These animals represent security, milk and eggs, and eventually meat. But they also represent responsibility, daily care that cannot be neglected regardless of weather. regardless of illness, regardless of any other demands on time and energy. A younger child, a girl of perhaps 6, helps her mother with the grinding, her small hands struggling with the heavy stone, learning skills she will need for her entire life. There are no schools here for children of this class, no books, no formal education. Learning happens through imitation, through participation, through the gradual accumulation of skills that will determine survival. Oh, the father appears, preparing to leave for his day's labor. He is a strong man, must be, to survive the physical demands of his work. But you see the wariness in his movements, the careful way he stretches muscles that already ache. He will spend his day in the blazing sun, moving stones, carrying water, performing whatever tasks the city's construction projects demand. His morning meal is simple: bread and beer, perhaps a few dates if the family budget allows. The beer is not the intoxicating beverage you might expect, but a nutritious, low-alcohol drink that provides calories and vitamins, safely prepared from grain and flavored with herbs. It is safer than water, more nutritious than water, and forms a staple of the Egyptian diet. You watch him eat, noting the deliberate way he chews each bite, making it last, savoring flavors that are simple but satisfying. There is no conversation during this meal, no leisurely enjoyment. He eats with the focused efficiency of someone who knows that the next meal is not guaranteed, that every calorie must be valued as he prepares to leave. You see the tools of his trade, simple but well maintained: a bronze chisel, carefully sharpened, a wooden mallet, worn smooth by countless hours of use, a leather apron to protect his skin from flying stone chips. These tools represent his livelihood, his value to the community, his only protection against destitution. His wife hands him a small basket, his midday meal, wrapped in a clean cloth, more bread, some dried fish, a small jar of water. This meal has been calculated as carefully as everything else, enough to sustain him through the brutal afternoon hours. Not so much that it strains the family resources. And then he is gone, walking out into the growing heat, joining the stream of workers who flow through the residential quarters each morning, heading toward the temples, the palaces, the tombs, the great construction projects that require constant labor, constant sacrifice from those who will never see their names carved in stone. The woman continues her morning tasks, and you begin to understand the complexity of managing a household in this place. Every decision must be weighed, every resource carefully allocated. The children need clothes, but cloth is expensive. The family needs oil for lamps, But oil costs grain, which costs meals, which costs strength. She sends the older boy to the neighborhood well, and you realize that even this simple task carries risks. The well is shared by many families, and water rights can be sources of conflict. The boy must be strong enough to carry the heavy water jars, smart enough to avoid trouble with other children, diplomatic enough to maintain the family's standing in the community. The girl begins sweeping the floors with a broom made of bound reeds. The dust she raises speaks of the constant battle against the desert, against the sand that works its way into everything, against the particles that threaten stored food, that irritate eyes and lungs, that serve as constant reminders of the harsh environment that surrounds this ribbon of civilization. As the morning progresses, you begin to feel the heat building. The mud brick walls that seemed so solid and protective begin to feel confining. The small windows that provided adequate light begin to seem inadequate for ventilation. The cool interior becomes warm, then uncomfortable, then oppressive too, and you realize, with growing certainty, that you have not even begun to experience what this day will demand. The house that seemed quaint and authentic in the morning cool will become an oven by afternoon. The tasks that seemed manageable will become ordeals. The children who seemed charming will become cranky with heat and confinement. Your modern body, accustomed to climate control and convenience, begins to rebel against these conditions. Your skin feels gritty with dust and sweat. Your throat is dry despite the carefully rationed water. Your stomach begins to rumble with hunger that simple bread and weak beer cannot fully satisfy. The woman notices your discomfort, and in her eyes you see a mixture of sympathy and resignation. This is life. Her expression seems to say, this is the reality that exists beneath the golden facade of temples and palaces. This is what survival means in this beautiful, terrible, ancient world. She offers you a small cup of water, precious water, carefully measured, and as you drink, you taste not just the mineral richness of the Nile, but the reality of a life where even this basic necessity must be earned, conserved, protected, where every drop represents labor, represents planning, represents the difference between life and death. Outside, the sun climbs higher, and you know that your real test has not yet begun. Chapter 3. The rules are strict, and the gods are watching. As the morning heat begins to build within the mud-brick walls, you hear a sound that makes everyone in the house freeze. Oh! It is the sharp blast of a bronze trumpet, followed by the rhythmic beating of drums, and the measured footsteps of many people moving in formation. The family exchanges glances, looks that speak of knowledge you do not yet possess, and the woman quickly ushers her children toward the back of the house. Through the small window, you glimpse a procession moving through the narrow street. Officials in white kilts, their chests crossed with sashes of office, their heads shaved in the manner of those who serve the state. Behind them walk scribes, their reed cases bouncing against their hips, their expressions serious, purposeful. And behind them, a sight that makes your blood run cold, a group of temple guards, their bronze-tipped spears glinting in the morning sun. This is not a celebration. You realize this is an official visit, and in ancient Egypt, official visits to residential quarters rarely bring good news. The family huddles together in the back room, and you begin to understand that the Golden City operates under rules that are as rigid as they are merciless, rules that govern not just actions, but thoughts, beliefs, even dreams. The procession stops, not at your house, but at one nearby. You hear authoritative voices demanding entry, then the sound of a door being forced open. Moments later, there are shouts, protests, and the unmistakable sound of someone being dragged away. The family you're with remains perfectly still, perfectly silent, until the sounds fade into the distance. Only then does the woman speak, her voice barely above a whisper. She explains, in words that somehow transcend language barriers, that their neighbor has been accused of speaking against the Pharaoh, of questioning the divine order, of harboring thoughts that threaten the stability of the realm. The evidence, a casual comment, overheard by the wrong person, reported to the authorities, transformed into a capital offense. This is your first lesson in the reality of life under divine rule. In this golden city, the Pharaoh is not merely a king, he is a living God, and any criticism of his reign is not political opposition, but blasphemy, punishable by death. The laws that govern this society are not suggestions, not guidelines, but absolute commands backed by divine authority and enforced with relentless efficiency. As the morning progresses, you begin to see these rules in action everywhere. The way people walk through the streets, eyes down, voices low, careful not to attract attention. The way conversations stop when strangers approach, resume only when it is safe to continue. The way children are hushed when their innocent questions touch on forbidden topics. A scribe passes by the window, and the woman quickly pulls back, explaining that scribes are not merely record keepers. They are the eyes and ears of the state, trained to notice everything, to remember everything, to report anything that might threaten the established order. Their literacy makes them powerful, but it also makes them dangerous, for they can read the laws, understand the punishments, and they know exactly how small the margin for error truly is. You venture outside, drawn by curiosity and growing unease, and immediately notice the subtle signs of surveillance that permeate this society. At every corner, at every intersection, someone is watching. A priest sweeping the steps of a small shrine notes everyone who passes. A merchant arranging his goods observes each customer with eyes that see more than purchasing power. An old woman spinning thread in her doorway tracks the movement of neighbors with the precision of a professional informant. This is not paranoia, you realize. This is survival in a society where wrong speech can mean death, where wrong actions can destroy not just individuals, but entire families. Vigilance becomes a necessity. Information becomes a commodity, and loyalty becomes the only currency that truly matters. You pass a small temple dedicated to Mat, the goddess of truth and justice, and see people queuing to make offerings, to swear oaths, to proclaim their innocence of whatever charges might be leveled against them. The goddess sits in judgment over all, her feather of truth weighing every heart, her eternal gaze penetrating every lie. But her justice is not the justice you understand. It is divine justice, absolute, unyielding, admitting no mercy for ignorance, no forgiveness for accident. A priest emerges from the temple, and you notice how people react to his presence, stepping aside, bowing slightly, their expressions carefully neutral. This man represents more than religious authority. He represents the power to interpret divine will, to declare what is acceptable and what is forbidden, to determine who lives and who dies based on adherence to cosmic law. He approaches you, and you feel your heart begin to race. His eyes are dark, intelligent, missing nothing. He speaks in the formal language of religious authority, and though you cannot understand the words, his meaning is clear. Who are you? What is your business here? By what right do you walk these sacred streets? You try to explain, to communicate your peaceful intentions, your desire to understand, to learn, but language barriers aside, you realize that your very presence here is problematic. You do not fit the established categories. You are not a citizen, not a slave, not a visitor with proper credentials. You are an anomaly. And in a society governed by divine order, anomalies are dangerous, potentially disruptive, possibly evil. The priest's questions become more pointed, more threatening. A crowd begins to gather, drawn by the spectacle of someone being questioned by religious authority. Their faces show a mixture of curiosity and fear. For they know that association with troublemakers can bring trouble to the innocent, can mark entire families for suspicion, can destroy reputations built over generations. You notice a small shrine to Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, and remember reading that this deity governs justice, oversees the weighing of hearts, records the deeds of mortals for divine judgment. The shrine is decorated with images of the gods, sacred goddess, its long beak representing the reed pen that writes the laws of the universe, its unblinking eye representing the divine surveillance that misses nothing. A solution presents itself. You claim to be a pilgrim, a devotee seeking wisdom from the great temples. This explanation is plausible, for people do travel great distances to consult the oracles, to make offerings, to seek healing from the gods. The priest's expression softens slightly, but does not entirely clear. Pilgrims are acceptable, but they must still follow the rules, Dean. Must still respect the sacred order, must still prove their worthiness through proper observance. He begins to list the requirements, the restrictions, the countless rules that govern behavior in this holy city. You must not speak during certain sacred hours, must not look directly at certain ritual objects, must not enter certain areas reserved for the pure, must not consume certain foods that would contaminate your spiritual essence, must not associate with certain classes of people whose impurity might transfer to you all. The list seems endless, and with each requirement, you understand more clearly how impossible it would be to navigate this society without years of training, without complete cultural immersion, without the kind of deep knowledge that comes only from birth and lifelong practice. Every gesture has meaning. Every word carries weight. Every choice can be interpreted as either pious or blasphemous. A woman hurries past, her head covered, her eyes down, and you notice the priest's disapproving glance. Something about her appearance, her behavior, her very presence has violated some subtle rule of propriety. She may not even know what she has done wrong, but the violation has been noted, recorded in the mental files of divine justice, added to the complex calculus that determines social standing, that measures worthiness, that decides fate. You begin to understand that the Golden City operates on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, there is the obvious beauty, the magnificent architecture, the proud display of wealth and power. But underneath, there is a complex network of surveillance, judgment, and control that touches every aspect of daily life, that monitors every thought, that enforces conformity through fear as much as through faith. A child runs past, chasing a wooden hoop, and is immediately scolded by his mother, not for playing but for playing too loudly, for drawing attention, for behavior that might be interpreted as disrespectful in the presence of sacred space. Even childhood innocence is subject to the rules. Even natural exuberance must be contained within acceptable limits. The priest continues his instruction, explaining the proper way to walk near temples, the correct manner of greeting religious authorities, the appropriate expressions of devotion for someone of your presumed status. His words are patient, thorough, but underneath them is an unmistakable threat. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. Violation of custom is not forgiven. Failure to observe proper protocol can result in punishments that range from public humiliation to death. You notice a group of children sitting in the shade of a building and realize they are not playing, but receiving instruction in proper behavior, learning the countless rules that will govern their entire lives. The teacher, an elderly scribe, points to hieroglyphic symbols, explaining their meanings, their proper use, their sacred significance, but he also explains the punishments for misuse, the consequences of writing the wrong thing, of speaking forbidden words, of even thinking thoughts that challenge divine order. This is education in ancient Egypt. You realize not the free exchange of ideas, not the encouraging of curiosity, not the development of critical thinking, but the careful inculcation of absolute obedience. The training of minds to accept without question, to conform without resistance, to submit without reservation to the will of gods and pharaohs. A merchant nearby adjusts his scales due, and you see the priest watching carefully. Honest weights and measures are not just matters of fair trade, they are moral imperatives, divine commandments. The scales of mat that weigh hearts in the afterlife are reflected in every commercial transaction, every exchange of goods, every calculation of value. Cheating in the marketplace is not merely theft. It is cosmic crime, an offense against the fundamental order of the universe. The heat continues to build, and you notice how it affects behavior. People move more slowly, speak more quietly, conserve their energy for the essential tasks of survival. But the rules do not change with comfort levels. Do not adapt to human needs. Do not make allowances for weakness or exhaustion. The law of the gods is eternal, unchanging, as pitiless as the desert sun. A group of workers passes by, their skin dark with sun exposure, their bodies lean with constant labor. They walk in perfect formation, their eyes straight ahead, their expressions carefully neutral. These are men who understand their place in the cosmic order, who accept their fate who have learned that survival depends on absolute conformity to the will of their superiors. The priest notices your attention to the workers and explains their function in the divine scheme. They are the hands of the gods, the instruments through which divine will is made manifest in stone and gold. Their labor is sacred, their suffering necessary, their obedience essential to maintaining the cosmic balance that keeps chaos at bay. This is the theology of absolute power. You realize the justification of suffering through appeal to divine purpose, the transformation of injustice into necessity, the elevation of obedience into the highest virtue, and questioning any of it, challenging any aspect of this system, is not merely political opposition. It is cosmic rebellion, an attempt to overthrow the very order of creation itself. As the morning progresses toward the scorching heat of midday, you begin to understand that your survival in this golden city depends not just on adapting to physical hardships, but on accepting a worldview that is fundamentally alien to your modern sensibilities. You must think like an ancient Egyptian, believe like an ancient Egyptian, submit like an ancient Egyptian, or face consequences that your modern mind can barely comprehend. The sun climbs higher, and with it, the temperature of both air and tempers, and you realize that your real test is about to begin. Chapter 4, A Day of Hard Labor and Strange Rituals. The sun reaches its zenithal, and with its blazing eye fully open, the golden city transforms into something that feels more like purgatory than paradise. The heat rises from the stone pavements in shimmering waves, distorting the air itself, making the magnificent temples appear to dance and waver like mirages. The very atmosphere seems to press down upon you with the weight of molten bronze. A horn sounds from the direction of the great temple complex, its deep note cutting through the oppressive air like a blade. This is the call to labor, the summons that draws workers from their brief morning respite into the blazing furnace of the Egyptian afternoon. Around you, men emerge from whatever shade they have found, their movements deliberate, resigned, their faces already glistening with the first beads of perspiration. The priest who questioned you earlier approaches again, but now his expression has changed. Where before there was suspicion, now there is something that might almost be compassion. He speaks quietly, his words carrying the weight of inevitability. You have been assigned, he explains, to the work gangs. Your status as a pilgrim offers no protection from the demands of divine construction. Every able body must contribute to the glory of the gods, to the eternal monuments that will ensure the pharaoh's successful journey to the afterlife. You are handed a simple linen loincloth, the standard garment of laborers, and directed to change from whatever clothing you wore. The transformation is immediate and humbling. Gone is any pretense of status, any protection of modernity. You are now what you truly are in this place, a body, a source of muscle and sweat, a tool to be used in service of something greater than yourself. The work supervisor approaches, a man whose skin has been burned to the color of leather by countless seasons under this merciless sun. His eyes hold no cruelty, but no mercy either. Only the practical assessment of someone who knows exactly how much labor a human body can provide before it fails. He looks you up and down, noting your soft hands, your pale skin, your obvious unfamiliarity with physical hardship, and his expression suggests you will not last long. You are assigned to a gang of 20 men, all similarly dressed, all bearing the marks of constant outdoor labor. Their bodies are lean, hardened, efficient machines adapted to this environment through necessity and survival. They greet you with nods, brief words, the casual acceptance of those who know that new workers come and go, that the truly unsuitable ones eliminate themselves within hours. The task ahead becomes clear as you approach the work site. A new temple is under construction, dedicated to Ptah, the creator god, patron of craftsmen and builders. The foundation has been laid. Massive blocks of limestone, quarried from distant cliffs and transported here at enormous cost in human effort. Now begins the slow, methodical process of raising walls that will stand for millennia. The blocks waiting to be moved are enormous, each one representing tons of stone that must be shifted, positioned, placed with precision that allows no error. The tools available are simple, wooden levers, rope made from palm fiber, bronze chisels, wooden mallets, sledges for dragging, ramps for lifting. Human muscle provides the power. Human intelligence guides the process. Human endurance determines the pace. Your first task seems deceptively simple. You are given a bronze chisel and wooden mallet, directed to help prepare the surface of a limestone block for placement ore. The stone must be perfectly smooth, perfectly level, able to bear the weight of the courses that will be built upon it. The supervisor demonstrates the technique, the angle of the chisel, the force of the mallet blow, the rhythm that prevents both tool and worker from wearing out too quickly. You begin and immediately understand why the other workers watched your assignment with knowing looks. The limestone is hard, resistant. Each chip removed requires precise placement of the chisel and a carefully controlled blow. Too light and nothing happens. Too heavy and the chisel skips. potentially damaging the stone or the tool. The rhythm is everything. But finding that rhythm while your unfamiliar muscles scream for relief, while sweat streams into your eyes, while the sun beats down like a physical force, is almost impossible. Within minutes, your hands begin to blister. The wooden handle of the mallet, smooth from countless hours of use, becomes slippery with perspiration. The bronze chisel, heated by sun and friction, burns your palm. You try to find shade, to pause, to rest. But the supervisor's voice cuts through your discomfort. The stones do not shape themselves. The gods do not wait for weak hands to grow strong. Around you, the other workers continue their labor with mechanical precision. Their movements are economical, efficient, born of years of practice and the knowledge that wasted motion means wasted energy. Wasted energy means exhaustion. Exhaustion means mistakes. Mistakes mean punishment, or worse. They have learned to work within their limits, to pace themselves, to survive the day so they can face another. A water bearer approaches. A boy of perhaps 12, carrying a large ceramic jar and a ladle. The water is warm, tasting of clay and minerals, but it is precious beyond measure. Each worker is allowed a specific amount, measured carefully, rationed according to the demands of the work and the supplies available. You drink gratefully, but notice how the experienced workers hold the water in their mouths, letting it soak into their parched tissues before swallowing, maximizing the benefit of every drop. The boy moves on, and you notice how he watches each worker, noting their condition, their pace, their likelihood of surviving the day. This is not charity, you realize, but calculation. The water must last. The workers must be kept functional, but resources cannot be wasted on those who will not complete their tasks. It is a brutal economics of human endurance. As the afternoon progresses, the heat becomes a living thing, a malevolent presence that saps strength with every breath. The limestone blocks radiate warmth like ovens. The bronze tools become too hot to hold comfortably. The very air shimmers with intensity that makes distances hard to judge, shapes difficult to distinguish, reality itself uncertain. You begin to understand why the ancient Egyptians worshipped the sun as a god. Ra and his solar bark, crossing the sky in majesty and terror. This is not the gentle warmth that brings life to crops, but the fierce power that can kill as easily as create. The sun god's daily journey is a test, a trial by fire that separates the worthy from the weak, the faithful from the failing. A commotion nearby draws your attention. One of the workers has collapsed, his body finally surrendering to heat and exhaustion. The others gather around, not in panic, but with the resigned efficiency of those who have seen this before. Water is brought, shade provided by holding a piece of linen over the fallen man. But there is no doctor, no medical intervention, no expectation of recovery. The supervisor examines the collapsed worker with professional detachment, feeling for fever, checking responsiveness, making calculations based on experience and necessity. If the man recovers quickly, he will be moved to lighter duties, allowed to rest in whatever shade can be found. But if his condition worsens, if he becomes a burden rather than an asset, other arrangements will be made, arrangements you do not want to contemplate. This is the reality of labor in ancient Egypt. Human life has value, but only insofar as it serves the greater purpose. The individual worker is replaceable, expendable, significant only as part of the vast machine that builds monuments to divine glory, awe. Personal suffering is irrelevant. Personal comfort unimaginable. Personal survival entirely dependent on useful contribution to the collective effort. You return to your stone, your chisel, your mallet. But now every blow feels like a countdown. Every chip of limestone removed brings you closer to your own collapse. Your soft hands are now raw, bleeding, the blisters broken and weeping. Your back aches from unfamiliar postures. Your shoulders burn from repetitive motion. Your head pounds from heat and dehydration, yet the work continues. Must continue, will continue regardless of your discomfort. The temple will be built. The gods will be honored. The Pharaoh's eternal glory will be ensured. And individual suffering is simply the cost. The necessary sacrifice, the price that mortals pay for the privilege of serving divine purpose. A priest appears, walking among the workers, observing the progress, offering blessings and encouragement. But his presence also serves another purpose. He watches for signs of discontent, for evidence of rebellion, for any indication that the workers might be losing faith in their sacred task. His blessings come with warnings. His encouragement carries threats. His very presence reminds everyone that this work is not merely construction, but worship, not merely labor, but sacred duty. He stops beside you, noting your condition, your obvious struggle, your foreignness to this environment. His words are gentle, soothing, but their meaning is clear. You may be a pilgrim, a seeker after wisdom, but you are also a body, a resource, a tool to be used until it breaks. Your spiritual journey must not interfere with your physical contribution. Your quest for understanding must not diminish your capacity for useful labor. The afternoon wears on, and the work becomes a kind of meditation, a repetitive ritual that numbs the mind even as it destroys the body. Chip, 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 each blow of the mallet a prayer, each fragment of stone removed an offering, each drop of sweat a libation poured out before the altar of divine construction. You begin to understand that this is how the great monuments were built, not through machinery or technology, but through the accumulated suffering of countless workers, each one contributing their small portion of agony to create something magnificent and eternal. The sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, but its heat seems undiminished. If anything, more oppressive as it approaches the angle where its rays strike directly into the work area. The limestone blocks glow like heated metal, the bronze tools burn like brands, the very air seems to pulse with malevolent energy. Another worker collapses, then another. The heat is claiming its victims with increasing frequency. Oh, the supervisors move among the remaining workers, assessing, calculating, determining who can continue, who must be replaced, who represents a lost investment in food and water and training. You struggle to maintain your rhythm, to keep your chisel steady, to make each blow count. But your vision is starting to blur. Your hands shake with exhaustion. Your coordination fails with increasing frequency. The stone that seemed merely hard in the morning now feels like iron, impervious to your weakening efforts, mocking your futile attempts to shape it to divine purpose. A shadow falls across your work area, providing momentary relief, and you look up to see one of the senior craftsmen, a master stone carver whose skills have earned him respect and slightly better treatment. He watches your technique, notes your condition, shakes his head with something that might be sympathy, or might simply be professional assessment of inadequate performance. He speaks quietly, offering advice, explaining subtleties of angle and rhythm that might make the work slightly less impossible. But his instruction comes with a warning. The quotas must be met. The work must be completed. The gods demand perfection, regardless of human limitation. Sympathy is a luxury that cannot be afforded. Compassion a weakness that serves no divine purpose. As the sun reaches its most punishing angle, you begin to understand that this day of labor is more than just work. It is initiation, trial by fire, a test of worthiness to exist in this harsh and magnificent civilization. Those who survive prove their right to continue. Those who fail demonstrate their unfitness for inclusion in the divine order. The great blocks of limestone, patient and eternal, wait for human hands to shape them, position them, transform them into monuments that will outlast empires. And you, small and temporary and failing. Continue your futile struggle against stone and heat and time, adding your tiny contribution to something vast and beautiful, and completely indifferent to your suffering. The afternoon burns on, relentless as divine judgment, merciless as cosmic law, and you realize that your day in this golden city has become something far more significant than mere experience. It has become a question of survival itself. Chapter 5. Night falls, and so do you. The sun god Ra begins his descent toward the western mountains, but his departure brings no immediate relief. The limestone blocks continue to radiate heat like giant ovens. The bronze tools remain too hot to touch without pain, and the air itself seems to throb with accumulated thermal energy that will take hours to dissipate. Your body, pushed beyond its limits, begins to send signals of distress that you can no longer ignore. The first sign is subtle, a slight tremor in your hands that makes precise work impossible. The chisel slips more frequently, the mallet blows lose their accuracy. Small chips of stone fly in unexpected directions. The supervisor notices, his experienced eye recognizing the early symptoms of heat exhaustion. But his expression shows no sympathy, only the practical concern of someone calculating lost productivity. Around you, the other workers begin to show similar signs. Some lean heavily on their tools, breathing in short, desperate gasps. Others move with the mechanical persistence of automatons, their consciousness reduced to the simple repetition of necessary motions. Still others simply stop, their bodies refusing to continue, their minds no longer able to command obedience from flesh that has reached its absolute limit. A water bearer makes another round, but this time the ration is smaller, more carefully measured. The supervisors know that the day's supply must last until sunset, that there will be no more until the wells can be accessed again, that every drop given to failing workers is a drop denied to those who might yet complete their tasks. The arithmetic of survival is brutal, unforgiving, coldly logical. You drink your allotted portion, savoring each warm, clay-tasted drop. But already you can feel your body's desperate thirst mocking the inadequate amount. Your tongue feels thick, swollen, your throat constricted, your lips cracked despite the humidity that should provide some relief. This is dehydration beginning its slow, inexorable assault on your system. The collapsed worker from earlier has been moved to a shaded area near the temple wall, but his condition has not improved. His breathing is shallow, irregular, his skin pale despite his deep tan, his eyes closed against a sun that no longer seems to exist for him. A priest performs rituals nearby, burning incense chanting prayers, preparing for the journey that seems increasingly inevitable. This is how death comes in ancient Egypt, you realize, not with violence or drama, but with the simple failure of human flesh to endure conditions that exceed its design. The heat, the labor, the inadequate water and nutrition, the constant stress of survival in a harsh environment. These things accumulate like sand in an hourglass, each grain bringing closer the moment when the flow simply stops. Your own condition continues to deteriorate. The blisters on your hands have burst and begun to fester. Infection setting in with the swift efficiency of bacteria that thrive in heat and humidity. Your back spasms with each movement, muscles knotted and strained beyond their capacity to recover. Your head pounds with a rhythm that matches your heartbeat, a drumming pain that grows stronger with each passing moment. But perhaps worse than the physical discomfort is the growing realization that night, when it finally comes, will bring dangers of its own. The temperature will drop, but not to comfortable levels. Instead, it will create a different kind of challenge. The desert night can be cold, surprisingly cold, and your body, weakened by the day's ordeal, may not have the resources to maintain core temperature. When the environment swings from furnace to refrigerator, a commotion near the main gate draws your attention. A new group of workers is arriving, fresh bodies to replace those who have fallen on. The cycle continues, will always continue, as long as there are monuments to build, gods to honor, pharaohs to glorify. The individual workers are interchangeable parts in a vast machine. Their suffering necessary, their sacrifice accepted, their replacement efficient and emotionless. Among the new arrivals you notice something that chills your weakening spirit. Several are already showing signs of illness. Dark circles under their eyes, the pallor of those who have not eaten well, the telltale cough of respiratory infection. They have been pressed into service regardless of their condition, because the work must continue, because the gods demand completion, because individual health is less important than collective achievement. This is how disease spreads in ancient communities. You understand with growing horror through the forced congregation of the healthy and sick, through shared water sources and sleeping spaces, through the breakdown of natural immunity that comes with exhaustion and malnutrition. What begins as construction project becomes breeding ground for pestilence. What starts as divine service becomes mass grave. A priest approaches your work area, but this time his purpose is different. He carries a small clay vessel, filled with oil and aromatic herbs, and begins anointing those workers who show signs of severe distress. The ritual is beautiful, solemn, performed with genuine reverence. But you realize with dawning terror that this is not healing ceremony. It is preparation for death, last rites for those whose service is about to end. The oil touches your forehead, cool and fragrant, a brief respite from the burning heat. The priest's words wash over you like distant music, prayers for safe passage, for acceptance by the gods, for forgiveness of whatever sins might impede your journey to the afterlife. His kindness is real, but so is his resignation. So is his acceptance that your fate is sealed. So is his professional preparation for inevitable loss. As the sun continues its descent, the light begins to change, taking on the golden quality that photographers prize, that tourists remember, that poets celebrate. But from within this experience, the beauty seems mockingly irrelevant. The same light that creates postcard images also reveals the true cost of this civilization. The human price paid for architectural magnificence. The individual suffering that underlies collective achievement. Other workers begin to collapse with increasing frequency, their bodies simply shutting down, no longer able to maintain the complex processes necessary for life under these conditions. Some fall quietly, almost peacefully, as if accepting a long, anticipated rest. Others struggle, fighting against the darkness, raging against the failure of flesh that should be stronger, should endure longer, should somehow transcend its mortal limitations. The supervisors move among the fallen with practiced efficiency, checking for signs of life, making decisions about resource allocation, determining who might yet recover and who represents only a drain on precious supplies. Their calculations are harsh but necessary in an environment where survival margins are razor thin. Sentiment becomes a luxury that can cost lives. You find yourself assigned to lighter duties, moving small tools, carrying water to those still working, tasks that acknowledge your declining capacity while still extracting whatever usefulness remains. But even these simple activities require enormous effort. Each step of victory, each completed task, a small miracle of will over weakness. The limestone blocks around you begin to change color as the sun descends, shifting from harsh white to warm gold to deep amber. The transformation is beautiful, magical, the kind of sight that inspires awe and wonder. But you see it through eyes that can barely focus, through a consciousness that struggles to process even simple sensory input. Beauty and suffering intertwined in ways that your modern mind finds impossible to reconcile. A senior craftsman pauses in his work to offer guidance. his weathered face showing concern that transcends professional interest. He has seen many workers fail, has learned to recognize the signs, knows when intervention might help, and when it is already too late. His advice is practical, urgent, born of experience with death in this place. Save your strength for the night, he whispers. The day's heat kills quickly, but the night's cold kills slowly, and those who survive both may yet see another dawn. His words carry the weight of hard-won wisdom, the knowledge of someone who has navigated these dangers multiple times, who understands the rhythm of survival in this unforgiving environment. As twilight approaches, the work pace begins to slow, not from compassion or scheduling, but from the simple reality that human endurance has limits that even divine will cannot exceed. The remaining workers move like ghosts, their shadows long and wavering, their forms increasingly difficult to distinguish from the gathering darkness. The evening prayer call sounds from the great temple, its notes clear and beautiful across the still air. Workers pause in their tasks, turn toward the sound, offer whatever devotion they can manage through parched throats and exhausted spirits. This moment of communion with the divine provides brief respite, temporary transcendence of physical suffering, connection to something larger than individual pain. But as the prayer ends and darkness begins to claim the sky, new challenges emerge. The temperature starts its inevitable drop, and your heat, exhausted body struggles to adjust. Sweat that provided cooling during the day now becomes a threat, chilling your skin, drawing heat away from your core, contributing to a hypothermia that seems impossible under these conditions, but is nonetheless real, nonetheless dangerous. A distribution of evening rations begins, but the portions are meager, insufficient to replace the calories burned during the day's labor. The bread is coarse, the beer weak, the dried dates few. This is survival feeding, not nutrition, barely enough to maintain life, nowhere near enough to restore strength or repair damage. You eat gratefully, desperately, but know that tomorrow will find you weaker than today, less capable, closer to the edge. The wounded and sick are gathered into a separate area, a makeshift infirmary where the day's casualties can be monitored through the night. You find yourself among them, your condition having deteriorated beyond the point where useful work is possible. The other occupants of this space represent the day's toll, the human cost of divine construction, the price paid in flesh and blood for monuments of stone. A physician appears, one of the few medical practitioners available to workers of your status. His knowledge is limited by the standards of his time, his treatments basic his supplies inadequate, but his compassion is genuine, his efforts sincere, his presence a comfort, even when his interventions prove ineffective. He moves among the sick and injured, offering what help he can, preparing some for recovery and others for peaceful departure. His examination of your condition is thorough, professional, discouragingly pessimistic. The combination of heat exhaustion, dehydration, infection, and general systemic shock has pushed your body beyond its ability to recover without resources that are simply not available. His prognosis is delivered gently but clearly. You may not survive the night, and if you do, the next day will likely finish what this one began. As full darkness descends, the temperature continues to drop, and you begin to understand how the desert night can be as deadly as the desert day. Your body, depleted of water and energy, struggles to maintain core temperature. Shivering begins, violent tremors that consume what little strength remains. Each convulsion brings you closer to system failure, to the point where consciousness simply lets go. Around you, other workers face similar struggles. Some huddle together for warmth, sharing body heat and mutual comfort. Others withdraw into themselves, conserving energy for the internal battle between life and death. A few simply let go, accepting the inevitable with the quiet dignity of those who have given everything they had to give. The night sky above is magnificent, clear and star, filled in ways that modern light pollution makes impossible to experience. The ancient constellations tell their eternal stories. The same stars that guided pharaohs and shepherds and lovers throughout the long history of this place. Their beauty is timeless, perfect, completely indifferent to the small human dramas playing out beneath their gaze. You find yourself thinking of the morning, of the golden city you first encountered, of the wonder and excitement that brought you to this place. It seems like a lifetime ago, a dream from someone else's experience. The reality of survival has stripped away all romanticism, all idealization, leaving only the brutal truth of what life actually costs in this harsh and magnificent world. A priest makes rounds, offering final rites to those whose journey is ending. His presence is comforting, professional, accepting of the cycle that brings all things to their appointed conclusion. Death in service of the gods is not tragedy, but fulfillment, not failure, but completion of sacred duty. His words provide context, meaning, dignity to suffering that might otherwise seem pointless. As the night deepens, consciousness becomes fragmented, reality uncertain, the boundary between sleeping and waking blurs, between life and death, between individual existence and cosmic dissolution. You float in and out of awareness, sometimes present in your failing body, sometimes observing from a distance, sometimes absent altogether. In these moments of clarity, you understand something profound about ancient Egyptian civilization. It was built not through exploitation or cruelty, but through a worldview that valued collective achievement over individual comfort, eternal glory over temporary pleasure, divine service over personal survival. The suffering was real, but so was the sense of purpose. So was the meaning. So was the connection to something greater than mortal existence. Oh. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance. The night air grows steadily colder, and your body continues its slow surrender to forces beyond your control. Yet somehow, in these final moments, you feel not despair, but a strange kind of peace. You have experienced something authentic, something real, something that transcends the comfortable artificiality of modern existence. The golden city sleeps around you, its temples and palaces dark against the star-filled sky, its residents resting in preparation for another day of service, another day of building, another day of reaching toward the eternal, and you, small and temporary and fading, have played your part in this vast enterprise, have contributed your measure of effort, have earned your place in the long story of human aspiration. Dawn is still hours away, and whether you will see it remains uncertain. But you have survived one day in an ancient Egyptian city, have learned what that survival truly costs, have understood why so few could endure what so many attempted. The golden city is beautiful, magnificent, eternal, and absolutely merciless to those who dare to walk its ancient streets. The night deepens, the cold intensifies, and consciousness fades like the dying embers of a sacred fire, leaving only the vast darkness the eternal stars, and the patient stones that will outlast all mortal dreams, all human ambitions, all the small struggles of those who built them, grain by grain, drop by drop, breath by breath, until the final breath is gone. End. May your own dreams be gentle and your rest peaceful. In a time and place where such luxuries are possible, where survival is not earned through daily trial, where the golden cities exist only in imagination, safe and beautiful and forever, just beyond the reach of time.